Well, now basically finishing off with free agency of the 24 free agency, we're kind of easing down. L'Jarius Sneed's now on the Titans. Christian Wilkins, like we already put in the thumbnail last episode, is on the Raiders. So Byron Murphy, who was circulating for a while as a possible candidate for the Raiders to get, not going to happen anymore. The Falcons getting Kirk Cousins makes an impact just because of they had Justin Fields going there. They had possibly Jaden Daniels with a trade up. The team that still hasn't figured out the QB position is the Vikings, which we might hit on today just because of some other rumors that we have been hearing in terms of the Patriots right now. But we're going to go ahead and enter this draft and start it with, of course, the top two picks that I feel like are going to be consensus. I don't see any other route other than Caleb Williams going first. A lot of people still want to try to knock him down in some way. He does have the weakness of holding onto the ball for way too long and trying to look for the big play and the flashy play, you can say. Just always looking downfield when he possibly could get somebody on a slant and maybe even get like 7 or 8 yards, get closer to a first down, then get the first down. Maybe worry about the big play on the next one after that, since the defense would probably fall down. But I think he was more worried about that in college so he could impress teams, which kind of shot him in the foot and also didn't at the same time because he had a lot of big plays, a lot of big throws that were very accurate, had great touch on them. He can throw the ball. It's just how he decides to throw it is his biggest issue right now. But I think with wide receivers like Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, he's going to do fine with that issue that he had before, because at USC he really only had Brendan Rice, and that was about it from what I know at this moment. But moving on to the Washington Commanders, we are going to go with Drake May. A lot of people want to try to put Jaden Daniels over Drake May. Drake May, like most people have already said, is a Josh Allen type quarterback, or just that type of build, I would say. He more relates to the Josh Allen type just because when Josh Allen wasn't playing with Brian Daboll, he was missing a lot of fundamentals, and he was missing a lot of balls in terms of accuracy. And I think that Drake May can definitely learn more in maybe Washington. I would like to see him with the Giants, but unfortunately the Giants might not even trade up and try to get him. Brian Daboll saying that Daniel Jones is their quarterback, so I'm not going to make any drastic trade for them to move up and get Drake May from the Commanders. I also don't expect them to trade out of the second spot because they already traded Sam Howell. You're basically already packing it up from there. I mean, yeah, Drake May, he could be maybe even better than Caleb Williams. When people were saying Caleb Williams is next Patrick Mahomes, I don't think that people are saying that much more anymore. Just because of what I had said previously. He looks too much for the big play. Patrick Mahomes is able to look for the big play, but also know when to drop it down, which Caleb Williams might learn in his first few years with the Bears, with all the talent that he now has, instead of what Justin Fields had to deal with before. But the Patriots now on the clock, with a lot of rumors circulating that they could just go with a best overall player. And that best overall player, of course, is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, a lot of people would question why they don't just go quarterback and figure it out later. I'm going to go with this just because I've had too much of the whole Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and then whatever else happens in the draft. I want to see what happens when Marvin Harrison gets taken by the Patriots, which wouldn't be a bad pick. It's just, what do you do at QB, since now basically all the QBs are off the market. Now, the only thing about Marvin Harrison that I would say is that he does a little bit too much in the arm extending whenever he tries to push off or try to get some space. But I think he can work on that. I just think that was college type of habits that he was having. I mean, he's basically good at everything. He is great at route running. He's great at his release and footwork. He might not be as explosive as somebody like Malik Neighbors, who we're going to talk about right now. But the Cardinals may not even want to draft at this position now that Jaden Daniels is still on the board. There are teams like the Vikings or the Broncos that would want to maybe trade up and get that quarterback. Now, I don't know which one of these teams it would be. It would be one of these three for sure. I would want to go Raiders, but I think the most likely option here is the Vikings, since they were basically building up their stock with these two picks right here. I would think that they give up those two first and maybe a third, maybe another first even. I mean, they're moving up 7 spots, so they might give up this first. I'm not going to get too specific with it because I don't want to piss off too many Vikings fans, and I also don't want to piss off too many Cardinals fans. So we're going to do the 11th and the 23. We'll do the third for this one right now. So the 2 first-round picks and the third-round pick to move up to the 4th spot to get what they would want to be the QB of their future. And that... Hold on. Okay. Now that I fixed that, because I'm using half of my brain cells right now. The Vikings are now on the board, and they will be taking Jaden Daniels. I mean, that's a perfect scenario for Jaden Daniels to come into. I think the only thing that Jaden Daniels had issues with is just the fact that he struggled under pressure. And I think the Vikings O-line is good enough. I mean, they handle it with Kirk Cousins decently. He did have his moments that the pocket was just falling at all times. The only thing about Jaden Daniels is his progressions, but you have a coach like Kevin O'Connell that could definitely help you out from having a QB like Kirk Cousins, who was great at that. He really only had this one season that he was like very good and at that top tier with Drake May and Caleb Williams. So you are taking a chance on him. But I think it's a good chance to be taking Jaden Daniels at this pick for the Vikings to try to keep Justin Jefferson there, pay Justin Jefferson, and figure it out from there. But the Los Angeles Chargers are now on the board, and I don't think I'm going to go Brock Bowers for this one. I think I'm going to let that one drop just because Malik Neighbors is on the board, and they seem to be having a bit of a fire sale right now with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams off the team. I would imagine that they try to go wide receiver and like running back in this draft just because it's Harbaugh from Michigan. I mean, he likes his run game, but there's just not a lot to be taking right now. And I don't think he's going to be that stupid off the rip. So I definitely would see them taking Malik Neighbors with his explosiveness. He's almost at the level of a Marvin Harrison Jr. He actually measured up, and he measured well. I mean, he has like an Odell type of build, with him saying that he's 6 foot, but he's basically 5'11" and some change. And he can get off the line quick and just beat the defender, but also be able to route run them. I mean, he can get them lost in any way possible and be the wide receiver one for the Los Angeles Chargers with the QB like Justin Herbert too. Justin Herbert's going to be feeding him with basically not even having anybody in the backfield now, or in the receiving core now, other than Joshua Palmer. And I don't know if I'll be trusting Quentin Johnston to get any contested balls, any balls at all. Pause. But Malik Neighbors going to be going to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that's a good pick for them. And then, unfortunately for the Giants, they were probably hoping that Malik Neighbors would drop to them. So they kind of have to pivot in some way. I still think that they do look for their wide receiver one. Rome Odunze might not be what a lot of people want here for them to go with that. They could go with Joe Alt. Evan Neal hasn't really been performing well. They could go defense. But I am going to go Rome Odunze. I really do think that they should focus on that offensive weapons situation, especially now that Saquon is gone. You really have no weapons on offense, and that's a bit of a concern other than Darren Waller, but he's just on and off at this point in his career. So we'll go ahead and go with Rome Odunze. I mean, he made Michael Penix look good, and it seems like Rome Odunze was the benefactor since Michael Penix is basically not even a first-round projection at this point. Although I do like him as a quarterback, just didn't get the hype that he needed. The only thing about Rome Odunze that might hurt him is after the catch running and just that speed that can get him off. He's able to get the ball wherever it is, but just after the catch, he can't really get that far from the cornerbacks and whoever's covering him. So, I mean, you can see him as a Chris Olave, but I feel like Chris Olave is a bit better at that. He isn't as fast as you would think with the size that Chris Olave is, but Rome Odunze's 6'3". I mean, he's able to get up there. I think that would be a good pick for the New York Giants right now with how scarce their offense is looking, since they tried to focus so much on the offensive line for so long and it just didn't really pan out lately. Tennessee Titans, though, on the clock, and I mean, they would be going with offensive line. You have Joe Alt here. You have Olu Fashanu, is that the new way to pronounce it? I personally still like Joe Alt. Troy Fatanu could also be good for them, but I think Joe Alt would be the best case scenario for the Tennessee Titans. Joe Alt has some outrageous size at 6'8". He might be on the lesser side at 6'8", being 322, but I think he's just very fit in that manner. His kick slides are a bit... They don't get much stretch to them, but I think his stature just makes up for it. He's always been one of the highest regarded tackles coming out of the high school class that he was in and now coming out of this class. He did drop for a little bit because of Olu Fashanu just really getting more hype than him. But now I think that he is in his rightful place. I mean, 6'8", man. Like, you don't really get a better size player than that and a better tackle than that for your offensive line, and especially after getting Skoronski last year for your offensive line. You put Skoronski at guard and then Joe Alt next to him. That'll be a hell of an offensive line already for the Tennessee Titans. And with all the moves they made on defense, they need to do something on offense and stiffen that offensive line as much as possible. Joe Alt going to Tennessee. I also made the screen a little bit closer so you guys can see it a little bit better. Hopefully you can. But the Falcons are now on the board, and I feel like this is going to be a consensus for me as well. Since they focus so much on getting Kirk Cousins this offseason, they still have, what is his name? Jesse Bates. They still have Jesse Bates on the team, if I'm not mistaken. So they're not really in need of any specific defense. But they can get an edge rusher from Alabama who basically can play 3-4 for you at any rate that you would like. I mean, he would just fit in just well in the Falcons' defensive scheme. And I think that he's the best edge rusher in the class. Jared Verse used to be one of my favorites, but I think Dallas Turner's a lot more versatile. And I think he could definitely fit into that Falcons defense with what they need. They just need that front seven help as much as possible. So Dallas Turner is going to be going to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think that we would go cornerback there. But now with the Chicago Bears on the board, Brock Bowers is still here, but they have Cole Kmet. So I feel like that would be a stupid decision at that. I don't really know what they would go with here since wide receiver isn't really something that they can take. Brian Thomas, it would be a bit of a reach. It wouldn't be a bad reach. But do they go defense since they went with Caleb Williams at number 1? I mean, I'm sure they're hoping that maybe Rome Odunze would fall, but they already have two really good wide receivers. Rome Odunze would basically just be caught in the dark at that point. They could go Byron Murphy for the defensive tackles there. They have Montez Sweat, but they basically can put him on the edge too. I think that I've seen some packages that he was on the edge. Quinyon Mitchell. They did get Gervin Dexter in the last draft out of Florida. I mean, I knew that Gervin Dexter was a good prospect. I just don't think that he's Byron Murphy type of prospect. I don't know if cornerback is really a need either. So they could figure out a way to trade out of this spot maybe. But to who? Like who's gonna be trying to jump that far to get somebody? I think I might go Byron Murphy here. Like, the thing is with Byron Murphy is that I think he's definitely better than Gervin Dexter. I think that he can fit into that inside defensive line and be beside Montez Sweat and basically swap places with Gervin Dexter a good bit, or even run a 4-3 and have them both on the line. But Byron Murphy's just super, super powerful. And, I mean, he does have short arms, but hella powerful. Hella powerful. I mean, he's very strong. And I think that would help that Bears defense a lot because their pass rush isn't really the best at most times. And I think getting the QB to get out of the pocket, kind of testing him and see what he can do, maybe even going to the side of Montez Sweat, maybe focus that in practice to go to the side that would make the QB go the opposite way towards Montez Sweat so Montez can go get him. I think that would also be a good scheme. So we'll go with Byron Murphy. I mean, I don't think that it's a common draft pick here, but we'll go with him at this position for the Chicago Bears. And the Jets, to be honest with you, I don't think they'll go Brock Bowers. I think they could go with somebody like Brian Thomas Jr. And that is simply because I think that even though he was the wide receiver 2 to Malik Neighbors, he's still a very talented wide receiver, and we were able to see that in the combine and pro day and stuff like that. And just be able to be one of the standout wide receivers throughout that process. And I think having a wide receiver 2 who already is capable of being a wide receiver 2 next to Garrett Wilson, and a solidified one, would help that Jets offense a lot. Although they might want to get tackle or something like that, Brian Thomas Jr., they already got Tyron Smith. And you spent the money to get him so you could focus on something else in the draft. And I think this is what they could go for if the other wide receivers are already off the board, like Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and Marvin Harrison. The next best person is Brian Thomas Jr. Although it may seem as a reach for most, Brian Thomas is very, very talented. With his height being at 6'3", he's not really the type of explosiveness that you would be getting out of Malik Neighbors, which may have complemented Malik Neighbors a lot, since Brian Thomas had longer strides. He would basically get open in space and not in press. And it didn't seem like he got a lot of experience with press. So that might be an issue for a little bit, but I think that he could play well next to Garrett Wilson, and especially with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who could help him out a lot with a lot of good wide receivers that he's played with. Brian Thomas Jr. could fit into that New York Jets offense nicely, very nicely. Now with the Arizona Cardinals on the board, who basically traded out of their position that after the whole Marvin Harrison Jr. situation, they probably could have gotten a haul for the Jaden Daniels trade. I'm not saying that those 2 first-round picks and the third-rounder is going to be all that they get. Now, with them at this spot, though, they could go different routes. I mean, you get an athletic cornerback like Quinyon Mitchell. That would help tremendously in that defense and bring a younger dynamic to that team. I like Quinyon on the Colts, though. I don't know if the Cardinals would go for him necessarily. I mean, guard, you could move Fuaga to guard just because of his minimal decrease in arm compared to other tackles in the draft class like Joel and Olu. You could really move a lot of these later guys, so they might even trade again. But players like Raheem Barton, Tyler Guyton, Amarius Mims, you could really figure out where they could go. I mean, Amarius Mims has insane size, so I don't think you would move him out from tackle necessarily. I don't even think they would go for defensive interior either. I mean, they could just take the defensive tackles off the board immediately, which I might do just to test it out, because I try to lean back on the defensive interior players whenever we get later into it, since there's not really much to go for other than maybe cornerbacks that could be questionable, tackles, things like that. Wide receiver still an option, although the next best would be Adonai Mitchell. At the 11th spot, I wouldn't be taking him there. You already have Trey McBride, who basically was having a breakout season last year. Cooper DeJean wouldn't be horrible. I think it could be one of these 2 cornerbacks, either Nate Wiggins or Terrion Arnold. I don't really see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I never really see the Cardinals use their cornerbacks as run stoppers or expect them to come down and make the big tackle by themselves. I think they basically try to group tackle in those situations. Nate Wiggins, who was supposed to measure at 185, 180, I think it was 185. And then he came to the combine and measured at 173, which a lot of people were banking on him being that 185 cornerback that could maybe get the tackle just because of his weight and because of his strength that he could have with that weight. But now he's 173, which makes him kind of slender. Or you could go with possibly the best cornerback in the draft in terms of skill and overall cornerback, and that could be Terrion Arnold. I think I will go Nate Wiggins here just because of fit, in my opinion. I mean, we can have a conversation down in the comments. I'm a bit split between these three. I don't think they would go Cooper DeJean. A lot of teams don't really fit that scheme that Cooper DeJean would fit in well to, and I don't think a lot of teams are going to take that risk either. So we'll go with Nate Wiggins for this one and see what happens with the Raiders, because I usually have Nate Wiggins going to them. Now, with the Denver Broncos on the board, we know now that QB is basically a given for them. They were basically just hoping that it was going to fall more and more and more into the 12th pick, really. Since the Vikings went up, that basically guaranteed the Broncos were going to be fine with getting J.J. McCarthy at the 12th spot. Now, the only thing that I have with J.J. McCarthy is that since he ran such a run-heavy offense, what are we supposed to see from a passing perspective? Yes, he's able to play make. Yes, he's able to make those third down plays that if you need him to get the first down, he would do everything in his power to do it, whether that's the running capability or an option or basically adjusting a receiver to go a certain way that you can see the open spot and get them to move over there. But J.J. McCarthy is a hit or miss at this spot. That's why I wouldn't really be taking him up here in the top 5. I don't know why he's moved in the top 5. I'm sure it's just because of how important the QB position is. J.J. McCarthy could fit well with Sean Payton, though. So we'll go ahead and see how that goes this year. And hopefully they end up actually getting their quarterback instead of screwing their quarterback like they did Russell Wilson. You know, after some thought of this Raiders pick here, I think I have an idea for a team that really didn't do much in free agency. Well, you could say that they did, but they kind of stayed at a plateau. They didn't really do anything pivotal other than maybe a Kendall Fuller signing. But now that I said that, the Miami Dolphins could move up, could possibly move up, would either be a second-round pick this year or a second-round pick next year. We'll just do the one next year. Moving 8 spots, there's not really anything of impact for the Raiders to stay at that pick for and not just move down to 21 and try to see if some of the better cornerbacks or better offensive linemen get down there. I think they try to get draft capital if the Miami Dolphins are offering it. I mean, they could even just do this, but we'll go with this one. It's either or, so don't get tight about it. But the Dolphins would now be on the clock at the number 13 pick, and I would immediately be taking Brock Bowers for them. Yes, Mike McDaniel doesn't use tight ends as much as he probably should, but maybe that's for a reason with the way of the tight ends that we've had in his time as a coach. Mike Gesicki, yes, he was good in some capacity, but not as good as the rest of the receiving core. Last year, we had Smite at tight end. Not really great either. I mean, you weren't looking for him first on that offensive side. Brock Bowers would bring a whole different dynamic because screens, Brock Bowers is great at tight end screens. He's basically like a Travis Kelce dupe, and you would hope that he is with the Mike McDaniel offense that could be ran with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Brock Bowers. You can have a lot of versatility if you bring in a player like Brock Bowers, although they probably should focus on offensive line. I want to try something different. this is like the day that or the mock draft that I'm really trying to have a different feel to it and not keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. And at this pick here, it's pretty simple for me. They need somebody on the opposite side of Ryan Ramczyk, and Olu Fashanu seems to fit perfectly there. Although Fuaga and Fatanu are still here, I mean, do you take Fuaga over Olu to fit in that tackle scheme? I think I'm going to take Olu for the Saints. This might help a team later down the draft board here, but Olu should be going to the Saints to fit in well with that offensive line. I mean, yes, there still hasn't really been any update in terms of his run blocking, but great size, has been at the top of the draft for a while, drops to 14. I think that's a good spot to take him. And now, with number 15 in Indianapolis, I would have them taking Quinyon Mitchell. The only things about Quinyon Mitchell that I can say that could be a weakness is him doing a bit too much or being over aggressive on the double moves, like a route where the receiver's going up, goes to the right. He might bite on that, and then the receiver is making his way up the field. I don't know why I blanked on the type of route that is. But Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, only thing that I would say other than that, strength, although his athleticism and him as an athlete is just bar none in this draft. I would see him as a CB1, maybe CB1B, next to Terrion Arnold. But yeah, Quinyon Mitchell, I think would fit great in Indianapolis. I think they can teach him to not bite so much on those double moves. And Seattle now on the clock, who could go Fuaga. I'm not going to have him taking him. I think edge Jared Verse just works the best with his size. It's the stereotypical size for the Seattle Seahawks defense. And just fit that outside linebacker role as well. Jared Verse has always been one of my more favorite edge rushers. He has a great skill set in terms of his move set, really. But him in a 2-point stance isn't really going to do much for a defensive line. So he has a deep bag. Unlike Chop Robinson, I think Jared Verse would fit well in that Seattle Seahawks defense, especially with McDonald coming in for that new head coaching spot. And the Jacksonville Jaguars now on the clock, who, again, Fuaga is a possibility there, but I just think that he's more of a tackle. And I think most teams do see him as a tackle. And the Jacksonville Jaguars continue to be the team for me and Terrion Arnold going there. Just really the best cornerback in the class. Yes, Quinyon Mitchell rivals that, but I think Terrion Arnold is just a better one overall, although he doesn't have the size that Quinyon Mitchell has at 6'4", 6'3", if I'm not mistaken. Oh, he's 6 foot. Terrion Arnold is also 6 foot. So it's just simply the athleticism. It's simply the athleticism between Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold. I don't know who I'm confusing Quinyon Mitchell's size with, or I'm just confusing a bunch of different heights, because I just finished studying this whole draft guide, the draft guide that they give on PFF, and I try to learn as much as possible on this. But enough about that. Cincinnati Bengals, this is where I have the Fuaga train stopping and going to Cincinnati, helping that offensive line even more, playing on the opposite side of Orlando Brown wherever he decides that he thinks that he can play, although I think left tackle seems to be his preferred one, even though he should be at right tackle. Being at 6'6", 324, the only thing would be his lower body not being as heavy as most tackles. His arms are a little shorter than most tackles, but he has a lot of talent. He's able to get off the ball with authority and to stop the defender from coming in at all, whether it's pass protection or run blocking. I think he's right there with Joe Alt in terms of the dual threat of pass protection and run blocking. Olufashanu isn't much of a run blocker or much of a run blocker compared to the other guys. But the LA Rams at 19 now on the clock and could go tackle. Troy Fautanu would be a good pick. It might be a little early for Latu here coming out of UCLA, but with that defensive line suffering a loss like Aaron Donald retiring from the LA Rams and the NFL in general, where the QBs were rejoicing, I think Latu would fit into that defensive scheme. Although they might need cornerback a little bit more, I still don't think Cooper DeJean would fit well in that scheme. Tackle, I think they need to focus on the defensive line. They don't really have much. They don't really have much going on there, and yeah, I like Latu. Although his neck injury that he had is concerning, I think they can definitely figure it out with Latu. Basically, not even moving at all because going from UCLA to Inglewood is not too far of a drive, depending on traffic. Pittsburgh Steelers now on the clock. Now, they already have QB with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Wide receiver, Adonai Mitchell wouldn't be a bad choice at 20. Tackle is definitely an option here. Troy Fautanu, I mean, that would be great, but I'm going to have them taking Amarius Mims. That just fits the Steelers' fit for me. Also, with Broderick Jones already being there from last year's draft class, Amarius Mims just has that same type of size that it would just fit tremendous for them. And Mike Tomlin would be able to unlock Amarius Mims' potential, and I'm pretty confident in that, especially with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. They're going to need those tackles. They're going to need the offensive line for the foreseeable future. And another team, or the only team that traded down, and the Las Vegas Raiders, now still looking for something to pick at. Kool-Aid McKinstry wouldn't be horrible. TJ Tampa. I mean, Jazon Newton is still here. I don't know why they would go defensive interior if they just spent all that money on Christian Wilkins. Oh, yeah. We're going to be going Troy Fautanu. I think that he would do well in that Raiders offensive line also because with his size, you're more than likely putting him at guard, maybe even center. And they already have a certified tackle in Miller. Adding some more offensive line. I don't know what they're going to do with the QB position. I could go Bo Nix here, but I think they're probably just going to wait on that and try to take something that is a bit more of an impact in the first round with an overall great tackle in Troy Fautanu, or great lineman in general, with him coming out of Washington. And really, his only weakness is the length, so that's why I would say move him to guard, move him to center if need be, because his length isn't the greatest, and it's like a hit or miss with his block strength that he has. But with the Eagles now on the board, I think this is where Cooper DeJean stops falling. It could fit well inside of this Eagles defense here. Yeah, I just don't see him falling past Eagles to get to the Packers at all. The only thing about Cooper DeJean is his change of direction is piss poor. I'm just kidding. His hips don't really move that quick as you would want a cornerback's hips to. His press isn't the greatest, so you might have him. That's why a lot of people were saying that he might go to safety, but I don't think that's what they would try to do. I think they would try to have him gain that change of direction that he needs with training. But Cooper DeJean should fit well inside of that Eagles defense with the need of defensive back and also just James Bradbury being past his time at this point. And it's just the better cornerback on the board. With him going to Philadelphia as the first white cornerback to be drafted in the first round, or Yeah, the first white cornerback to be drafted in the first round. And now the Arizona Cardinals, with their second pick in the first round, could go with that offensive line finally. If I didn't already. No, they got Nate Wiggins. So that wouldn't be... Oh, they could go Newton. Newton wouldn't be horrible, simply because they have never really had a defensive tackle that really stood out. Now, Newton isn't that type either. I wouldn't put him up there with being like a pivotal... Oh, Chop Robinson. Yeah, I'm going to have them taking Johnny Newton here out of Illinois. He can really put pressure on the quarterback. Now, he doesn't have the speed to get to the quarterback in time, possibly with all these high-level quarterbacks that can get out the pocket very quickly. Maybe in 2010, but Johnny Newton should be able to play well on that defensive line for the Arizona Cardinals. And the Cowboys are now on the clock, losing Tyron Smith. And I think this is a perfect time for Graham Barton to step in and fill his role. It just seems like a Cowboys type of pick. Now, yes, he is listed as a tackle. You can move him inside. I think with Graham Barton, you have a lot of versatility in terms of where he can be. I think he was just a left tackle the entire time, but his size basically says something different. And at the NFL level, they might have to move him around, especially in that Cowboys offensive line that likes to move offensive linemen around. Graham Barton should be fine, though, with that. And yeah. Jackson Powers Johnson, though. Jackson Powers Johnson. Since the Dolphins aren't down here, there's not really... Usually, the Dolphins would be taking Jackson Powers Johnson without a doubt in my mind. I'm not convinced by the center signing that they had. I mean, actually, Jackson Powers Johnson might be the guy to go with for the Cowboys. Yeah, he's just very, very talented at that center position. He's played right guard. Yeah, I would definitely have Jackson Powers Johnson going to the Cowboys and try to help that new era of the offensive line, since Zach Martin is also expiring next year. He might even retire at that point. You have a lot of younger players now getting into that offensive line instead of that stifling offensive line they used to have. And the Green Bay Packers should be looking for something similar. And since Amarius Mims isn't on the board, you could go with the surefire player like J.C. Latham at tackle, or you can go with Tyler Nubin, who really is a great safety. I'm sure a lot of Packers fans want me to pick Tyler Nubin right now, but I'm not 100% sure on it. Just because, yes, your offensive line is cool, but having a player like J.C. Latham come out of college and basically be already ready, with a lot of your offensive line being potential good players or potential good tackles, potential good guards. J.C. Latham has been playing well at that right tackle position for Alabama for a good bit now, and has the size, has the weight. I think he can definitely fit well with that Green Bay Packers offensive line. So we'll go J.C. Latham for this one. Tyler Nubin might be the next one in terms of the mock draft that I'll do. But I'm going to go tackle. I would usually have the Green Bay Packers going tackle with this position. But J.C. Latham has already fell this far. I think that he could have even been taken at 18 if Fuaga didn't fall that far to the Bengals. But now the Bucs on the clock, who really need a whole lot. This could be another team that goes Graham Barton just because of his ability to go inside at this point with his size. He doesn't really have much of a choice if he wants to get picked in the first round. They don't really need wide receivers since they re-signed Mike Evans. They still have Chris Godwin. Running back isn't something that they can focus on right now. Edge is also something that just isn't in the cards. Chris Braswell, maybe. Kamari Lassiter, maybe. But I think you're taking the best player on the board right now, and that's Graham Barton at the supposed tackle position. I don't think that's going to last very long for him with his unfortunate size. He's very talented at his position. It's just at the NFL level, you need to be like 6'6", 6'7", 340 pounds to be on that edge to stop most of these guys just based off of your height and weight, or you have to be very talented to stop them. And the Cardinals now on the board once again, but this time there's not really a lot for them to go for, you know? So I'm going to have them trade with the Buffalo Bills, that 27th pick, and try to get them to bite on something like 2 seconds, maybe. I mean, if PFF is saying that it's a good trade, then I might not want to do it. This could happen as well. Their second and a third, the later third, maybe even later than that. So the 60th and the 144 for 27, just because they could just wait for that defensive player or their wide receiver to be there at the bottom. But hold on, let me see if it's actually worth it for them. They could actually wait for the second round. So maybe they don't even go that route. But the Cardinals still have to pick somebody anyway. So we still have to figure out who they would go for. Tyler Guyton, that's a surefire tackle. That's a surefire tackle for sure. Adonai Mitchell wouldn't be a bad option just because of Marquise Brown being gone, Rondale Moore being gone. Now you don't even have Marvin Harrison. So you really have nobody or nobody of significance for Kyler Murray to throw to, which I think in the real world, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be going to the Cardinals. But if Marvin Harrison Jr. somehow gets taken by the Patriots, this is what they're probably going to have to do, which isn't a horrible situation right now. Nate Wiggins, there's Zon Newton. Now they're going to be getting Adonai Mitchell. There wasn't really much of any option at wide receiver at any time since Brian Thomas got taken at 10. And after that, it was a very defensive heavy. Like I said, with Brock Bowers, there was no point of them taking him. Trey McBride is already on the team, and he's very talented. So Adonai Mitchell should be the wide receiver off the board at this position to the Arizona Cardinals to try to help Kyler Murray as much as possible. Adonai Mitchell makes it look easy. He makes it look easy with Xavier Worthy right next to him in terms of his speed. With Adonai Mitchell, he's talented enough to go up and get it. Like we saw in the championship games, he basically jumped up in the air and it was like slow motion as he was catching the ball for the touchdown. It was very impressive, and I was hooked from that moment of his talent and of his legitimacy in being a first-round wide receiver or early second-round wide receiver. But enough about Adonai Mitchell. Very talented at Texas. We'll see if Quinn Ewers ends up coming out of college next year. But Tyler Nubin would be the person that I go with for the Buffalo Bills. There's not a lot of wide receivers to just gravitate towards other than Adonai Mitchell, possibly. But I don't think they're trading their second-round pick or any of those type of picks to try to get Adonai Mitchell. It's not like a Brian Thomas Jr. that could really have an impact. Keon Coleman they can pick in the second round possibly since his draft stock has fallen so far. Maybe he doesn't have the greatest speed, just like Brian Thomas Jr. in some situations. He just has like those long strides. But you need that type of guy to just go up and get it since Gabe Davis left. And with Tyler Nubin coming onto the team, it helps the situation of Jordan Poyer being released. Micah Hyde might not even be coming back. So you need somebody to be on the other side of Taylor Rapp with what it seems to be the starting safety on one side. Tyler Nubin can fit in just well on the other with that either Sean McDermott defensive scheme or their defensive coordinator coming back from his hiatus that he seems to have taken last year. And Tyler Nubin is very talented in his own right, playing behind Antoine Winfield Jr. when he was at Minnesota. The only thing that I would say Tyler Nubin needs to work on is tackling without leading with his head. That might cause a lot of issues in the NFL. I mean, maybe the Bills fans will like that. Maybe the Bills team would like that since it's an aggressive hit. DeMar Hamlin likes to do that type of stuff. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I wouldn't rely on him on the run defending either. I don't know if Jordan Poyer was really much of a reliance in that capacity. I think in that defensive scheme, he will learn a lot more than any other defensive scheme that he could possibly fall into. Since Baltimore's probably not taking him, 49ers aren't, Chiefs aren't, and I don't think the Lions would either. So Tyler Nubin fits in just well there, and then the Bills can go with wide receiver in the second round, which would work fine. And the Detroit Lions now on the clock with guard, center, edge, or cornerback as their main focus. And I think in this position, I might go Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. He might need to add on a little weight while he's with the Lions. And I think this will just be a depth situation because Frank Ragnow is still on the team. But in the situation that they lose Frank Ragnow, whether it's retirement, whether it's free agency, whether it's injury, this is a good situation for them to prepare for the future. And I don't think they really need to work on anything right now to fix. They got DJ Reader at defensive tackle. They have Aiden Hutchinson at edge. I can't remember who their other edge is at this very moment just because of the whole mix-ups in free agency. I don't want to say something wrong. I'm a little concerned with their cornerback room just because of Sutton basically being missing right now. But I'm going to go with the depth situation for the Detroit Lions. With Zach Frazier, I think he can add on some mass, add on some strength, because he gets tossed to the side a little bit too easily right now. And playing under somebody like Ragnow, you can definitely learn and also just build yourself up while you wait for your spot to open up as that center position. Or he can even fill in at guard. Who really knows with the Lions offense and Dan Campbell handling it. But the Baltimore Ravens, a team that might not see Jadeveon Clowney, you can go with Chris Braswell. I continue to go with Chop Robinson just because I think that he would fit well with that defensive team. Out of Penn State, like I've said previously, if his speed doesn't get him through, he doesn't really have much of anything. If his speed or power gets him through, he doesn't really have much of anything else in his bag to figure out, like a swim move, a spin move. He did try to do different things at some point. I still do think that they take a chance on Chop Robinson to learn and to build as an edge rusher in that Baltimore Ravens defense. And that's what I'm going to go with for them. The 49ers, Tyler Guyton, I think whatever tackle is on the board, they would be happy to get at this point because most of these are pretty set in stone. I mean, Tyler Guyton, it's not a bad situation to go in and learn from Trent Williams on whichever side that you're going to be on for that 49ers offense. I think he would be on the same side as Trent Williams and possibly take over after he retires. But Tyler Guyton at right tackle, I think he could fit well with the 49ers. Although maybe cornerback could be something that you look at as well with Kool-Aid McKinstry. Maybe some people are going to be mad that Kool-Aid McKinstry never got taken by any of these guys, but there was a lot of very talented players that fell, and a lot of these were offensive linemen that were able to fall this far with Graham Barton or J.C. Latham, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Troy Fautanu. It is what it is, though. Tyler Guyton would be my possible last tackle off the board, and although it may seem biased, in a way, not even bias, just like a little recency bias, Xavier Worthy seems to be the type of guy that they might need in that Kansas City Chiefs offense. Although could be in the second round, you don't know how far he's going to fall. With that type of speed, you can't take a chance on him. Rashee Rice is already your basically wide receiver one. You need that speedy threat. They've tried to find that in some way. And I think taking a chance on Xavier Worthy, already being one of the best teams in the league, there's not really much to lose. You did lose a cornerback in L'Jarius Sneed, which we could consider at this point. Kool-Aid McKinstry could even go. They still have Trent McDuffie, but what else do you have to rely on there? But how is Kool-Aid McKinstry also going to learn? That's just my thing. That's why for this, I'm just going to go with Xavier Worthy for right now. There's a lot of other very talented wide receivers, but the speed that Xavier Worthy has to just beat his man is unmatched. Unmatched in this draft class. Now, this might be the hype that John Ross got whenever he broke the record as well. It's just a chance you got to take, and the Kansas City Chiefs have the capability of taking that chance. So we'll go ahead and take Xavier Worthy for them. And I think that really was one of my better draft classes that I've done, or mock drafts that I've done. Brian Thomas Jr. might have gone a little early. Byron Murphy as well, you could say. But everything else I'm pretty confident in. Latu is just so wishy-washy in terms of where he's going to go. If he's going to go in the 10s, if he's going to go all the way at the bottom of the draft. You don't really know. Tyler Newman, I think if all the wide receivers of significance are off the board for the Buffalo Bills, they're definitely going defense. And yeah, if you enjoyed that, please go down there and like so more people can see it. So you can get the next upload of this on your homepage. So if you don't feel like subscribing right now, but if you do feel like subscribing, go down there and subscribe before you let me know your opinion in the comments below. I would love to talk to y'all down there. I love talking to y'all in general about these draft classes. It helps me learn, and it may help you learn as well. So, yeah, I like this draft class. I'm pretty confident in it. In the situation that Marvin Harrison goes to the Patriots, the likelihood of that happening, we don't know yet. We really don't know. And the draft is coming up in about a month now. So that's exciting. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.